The day my daughter gave birth, her mother-in-law and I went to war over my grandchild. This is Mama Rebecca. Come sit close and listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you nearly destroyed 2 families and taught me lessons about motherhood I never expected to learn at my age. The day my daughter Rebecca gave birth to my first grandchild should have been the most beautiful day of our lives. Instead, it became a battlefield between me and her husband's mother, a woman who believed that blood meant nothing, and that marriage gave her more rights to my grandchild than I had. What started as disagreements over baby care turned into something so ugly that it almost cost my daughter her sanity and her marriage. But when I walked into that hospital room and saw what that woman was planning to do with my grandbaby, I knew the gloves had to come off. I raised 4 children on my own after my husband passed when they were young, and every one of them knows the value of respect, family loyalty, and standing up for what's right. My youngest daughter Rebecca married her husband Marcus 3 years ago, and while I had my concerns about his family from the beginning, I kept my mouth shut for the sake of peace. But the day little Emma was born, all that peace went straight out the window. You see, my dears, Marcus's mother Virginia, or Lady Virginia as she likes to be called, has always thought she was better than our family. She's one of those women who married into money and forgot where she came from. She lives in a big house on the hill, drives fancy cars, and acts like her money makes her more important than hardworking folks like us. From the moment Rebecca started dating Marcus, Virginia made it clear that she didn't think my daughter was good enough for her precious son. Rebecca seems like a sweet girl, Virginia told me at their engagement party. But I do hope she understands the level of sophistication required to be part of our family. I bit my tongue that night, my dears, but I filed away her words for future reference. A woman who talks about levels of people is a woman who's forgotten that we all put our pants on one leg at a time. When Rebecca announced she was pregnant, Virginia immediately took over like she was the queen bee, and the rest of us were just worker bees buzzing around her royal baby. She started making plans for the nursery, choosing doctors, and telling Rebecca what she should and shouldn't eat, as if my daughter hadn't been taking care of herself just fine for 26 years. Rebecca, dear, you really should be seeing Dr. Morrison instead of that clinic doctor, Virginia would say during family dinners. Dr. Morrison delivered all the best families' babies. He understands the importance of proper prenatal care. My daughter, bless her heart, tried to keep everyone happy by listening to Virginia's advice, while still making her own decisions. But I could see the stress building in Rebecca's eyes as Virginia's suggestions became more like demands. The real trouble started when Rebecca went into labor. It was a Tuesday evening when Marcus called to say they were heading to the hospital. I grabbed my bag, the one I'd packed weeks ago with all the things I knew my daughter would need, and drove straight to Regional Medical Center. I expected to find Rebecca and Marcus in the labor and delivery ward, maybe with Virginia there offering quiet support. What I found instead was Virginia holding court in the waiting room like she was hosting a tea party, with Marcus's aunts, cousins, and half the country club ladies surrounding her. "Oh, Zelda, how nice that you could make it," Virginia said when she saw me, like I was some distant acquaintance instead of the baby's grandmother. "Rebecca is doing fine. The doctors say it might be several more hours, so there's really no need for you to stay if you have other obligations." Other obligations? My dears, my daughter was in labor with my first grandchild, and this woman was suggesting I might have somewhere else to be? "Thank you for the update, Virginia," I said as sweetly as I could manage, "but I'll be staying right here until my grandbaby arrives." That's when I noticed something that made my blood pressure rise. Virginia had set up what looked like a command center in the corner of the waiting room. She had notebooks, lists, phone numbers, and what appeared to be a complete birth plan that she'd written herself. "What's all this?" I asked, nodding toward her paperwork empire. "Oh, I've just been organizing everything for when the baby arrives," Virginia said proudly. "I've arranged for the best private room, contacted the pediatrician, and made sure the nursery staff understands our family's preferences for feeding and care." Our family's preferences? I hadn't been consulted about any preferences, and last I checked, Rebecca and Marcus were the parents, not Virginia. But I kept my mouth shut because this was supposed to be a joyful occasion, and I didn't want to start any drama while my daughter was in labor. That was my first mistake, my dears. Sometimes staying quiet just gives difficult people more room to spread their wings. At 2:47 a.m., little Emma Grace made her entrance into the world. Weighing 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and the sweetest little cry you ever heard. When Marcus came out to tell us the news, I thought my heart would burst with joy. "She's perfect," Marcus said with tears in his eyes. "And Rebecca did amazing. They're both healthy and beautiful." We all cried and hugged and celebrated, and for a few minutes, it felt like we were just one big happy family welcoming a new baby. But that feeling didn't last long. "When can we see them?" I asked, already imagining holding my grandbaby for the first time. "The nurse said they need about an hour to get cleaned up and settled," Marcus replied. "Then immediate family can come back in small groups." That's when Virginia stepped forward with her notebook. "I've already arranged the visitation schedule," she announced. "Marcus and I will go first since we're the primary family, then the other relatives can rotate in 15-minute shifts to avoid overwhelming the baby." Primary family? My dears, I have never in my life heard such nonsense. I was that baby's grandmother just as much as Virginia was, and I had every bit as much right to see my daughter and grandbaby. "Virginia," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "I think Rebecca might want to see her mother before she sees her mother-in-law." Virginia's eyes flashed with something cold and mean. "Actually, Zelda, in most cultures, the husband's mother has precedence in these situations. It's his child after all." His child. As if Rebecca had just been some kind of incubator instead of the woman who carried that baby for 9 months and just spent 14 hours bringing her into the world. That's when I felt something shift inside me, my dears. The mama bear that I'd been keeping on a leash for 3 years suddenly broke free, and Virginia was about to meet the real Mama Zee. "Let me tell you something, Lady Virginia," I said, standing up to my full height and looking her square in the eye. "That baby might have your son's last name, but she's got my daughter's blood, my daughter's strength, and my family's love running through her veins. I didn't raise 4 children and bury a husband to be told by some fancy woman that I'm secondary family when it comes to my own grandchild." The waiting room went dead quiet. Marcus's aunts stopped their chattering, and even the nurses at the station turned to look. Virginia's face turned 3 shades of red, but before she could respond, Marcus came back down the hall. "Mom Zee, Mom Virginia, Rebecca's asking for both of you," he said, clearly oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. "She wants her mothers to meet Emma together." We walked down that hallway in stone-cold silence, Virginia on one side of Marcus and me on the other, both of us smiling for his benefit while shooting daggers at each other when he wasn't looking. But when I walked into that hospital room and saw my baby girl holding her baby girl, all the anger melted away for a moment. Rebecca looked tired but radiant, and little Emma was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. "Mama," Rebecca said softly, holding out her arms to me, "come meet your granddaughter." I held that precious baby and felt love like I'd never experienced before. Emma opened her tiny eyes and looked right at me, and I swear she smiled. I was so lost in that moment of pure joy that I almost forgot Virginia was there. Almost. "She's gorgeous, Rebecca," Virginia said, reaching out to take the baby from me after I'd held her for maybe 2 minutes. "Let me see my grandbaby." I handed Emma over reluctantly, and Virginia immediately started her inspection like she was evaluating a purchase. "Oh, she's perfect," Virginia cooed, but then her voice changed. "Rebecca, dear, are you planning to breastfeed? Because I've read that bottle feeding might be more practical for your situation." My situation? What did that mean? Rebecca looked confused. "I was planning to try breastfeeding, at least at first." "Well, of course, that's admirable," Virginia said in that condescending tone she'd perfected. "But bottle feeding would allow other people to help more with feedings. And frankly, dear, you'll want to get your figure back as quickly as possible." I felt my temperature rising again. This woman was criticizing my daughter's feeding choices not 5 minutes after she'd given birth? "Rebecca will feed her baby however she wants to," I said firmly. "That's between her, Marcus, and their doctor." Virginia gave me a look that could have frozen hell. "Of course, Zelda, but some of us have more experience with these decisions." "More experience?" I raised 4 babies, including the daughter who was lying in that bed. But before I could respond, the nurse came in to check on Rebecca and the baby. "How are we doing, Mama?" she asked Rebecca kindly. I'm okay, just tired, Rebecca replied. When can I try feeding her? Whenever you're ready, the nurse said. Skin-to-skin contact and early feeding are wonderful for both mom and baby. Virginia immediately jumped in. Nurse, what are your thoughts on bottle feeding versus breastfeeding? I'm concerned about the baby getting proper nutrition. The nurse looked a little taken aback. Well, ma'am, that's really up to the parents. Both options can be perfectly healthy when done properly. Of course, Virginia said, but in my experience, bottle feeding allows for better scheduling and more involvement from family members who want to help. I could see Rebecca getting overwhelmed by all the discussion and advice when she should have been resting and bonding with her baby. This was supposed to be a peaceful time, but Virginia was turning it into a debate. Maybe we should let Rebecca rest, I suggested. She's had a long day. Actually, Virginia said, settling into the chair next to Rebecca's bed like she was planning to stay for hours. I thought I'd stay and help with the first few feedings. I have so much experience with newborns. Experience? Virginia had one child 30 years ago, and probably had a nanny doing most of the work. Marcus looked back and forth between his mother and me, clearly sensing the tension but not knowing what to do about it. My poor son-in-law was caught in the middle of something he didn't understand, and my daughter was too exhausted to manage the situation herself. That's when I made a decision that probably saved my relationship with my daughter, but definitely started a war with Virginia. Rebecca, honey, I said gently. Why don't you get some rest? I'll sit with Emma for a while. Oh, that's not necessary, Virginia said quickly. I'm perfectly capable of watching my granddaughter. I'm sure you are, I replied, but I think Rebecca would feel more comfortable with her mother here for the first night. What followed was the most polite, passive-aggressive argument you've ever heard, my dears. Virginia and I spent the next 30 minutes smiling sweetly at each other, while fighting over who had more right to stay with the baby. I think new mothers need their own mothers nearby, I said. But grandmother experience is so valuable, Virginia countered. Maternal instincts are irreplaceable, I responded. Family traditions are so important to pass down, she fired back. Poor Rebecca finally spoke up. Maybe you could both come back tomorrow when I'm feeling better? But Virginia wasn't having it. Oh, sweetheart, I couldn't possibly leave you alone on your first night with the baby. What if something happens and you need help? As if the hospital wasn't full of trained nurses who knew exactly what to do. I was about to respond when the nurse came back in with some paperwork. Mrs. Williams, we need to get some information for the birth certificate and insurance forms. While Rebecca was busy with the paperwork, Virginia leaned over to me and said in a low voice, Zelda, I think we need to establish some boundaries here. This is my son's child, and I have every intention of being very involved in raising her properly. Raising her? This woman thought she was going to raise my granddaughter? Virginia, I said just as quietly, this is my daughter's child, and I've been helping raise babies since before you learned to change a diaper with those manicured nails of yours. We stared at each other like two cats ready to fight, and I could see that this was just the beginning of our battles. Over the next 3 days while Rebecca was in the hospital, Virginia and I engaged in what I now call the great-grandma wars. We fought over everything: who got to hold the baby, who knew the right way to burp her, who should be there for feeding times, and who had better advice about everything from diaper brands to sleeping positions. Emma should sleep on her back, I said during one of our encounters. Actually, side sleeping is better for digestion, Virginia contradicted. The pediatrician specifically said back sleeping. Well, my pediatrician 30 years ago had different recommendations. And on it went, with poor Rebecca caught in the middle trying to keep peace while learning to care for her new baby. But the real crisis came on the third night, when I decided to stay late to help Rebecca with a difficult feeding session. Emma had been fussy all day, and Rebecca was getting frustrated trying to get her to nurse properly. She keeps latching on and then pulling away, Rebecca said with tears in her eyes. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. You're doing fine, baby, I assured her. Sometimes it takes a few days for both of you to figure it out. We worked together for about an hour, with me helping Rebecca find comfortable positions and encouraging her when she got discouraged. Finally, Emma settled into a good feeding rhythm, and Rebecca started to relax. Thanks, Mama, Rebecca said softly. I don't know what I'd do without you. That's what I'm here for, sweetheart. I was feeling pretty good about our progress when Virginia walked into the room carrying a large bag and looking determined. How are my girls doing? She asked brightly, but there was something in her tone that put me on alert. Much better, Rebecca said. Emma finally got the hang of nursing. Oh, that's wonderful, Virginia said, but she didn't sound like she meant it. Actually, I brought something that might make things even easier. She reached into her bag and pulled out bottles, formula, and what looked like a complete bottle feeding setup. Virginia, what is all this? Rebecca asked. Well, dear, I know you've been struggling with the breastfeeding, and I thought we might try giving Emma a bottle tonight, just to give you a break and make sure she's getting enough nutrition. I felt my blood pressure shoot through the roof. This woman was undermining my daughter's efforts to breastfeed by suggesting she wasn't providing adequate nutrition for her baby. Rebecca's doing fine with nursing, I said firmly. Emma is gaining weight, and the doctor said everything looks perfect. Of course, Virginia said dismissively. But sometimes formula is just more practical, and it would allow other people to help with feedings. Other people meaning Virginia herself, who wanted to take over one of the most important bonding experiences between my daughter and her baby. I think I want to keep trying with breastfeeding, Rebecca said uncertainly, looking back and forth between Virginia and me. Are you sure, dear? Virginia pressed. It seems like such a struggle for you. That's when I saw what was really happening, my dears. Virginia wasn't trying to help my daughter. She was trying to convince her she was failing so that Virginia could step in and take over. Rebecca, I said gently but firmly, breastfeeding is challenging at first for almost every mother. You're not struggling, you're learning. And you and Emma are doing beautifully together. Virginia's face tightened with annoyance. Zelda, I think Rebecca can make her own decisions about what's best for her baby. You're absolutely right, I replied. Rebecca can make her own decisions, without pressure from anyone. We stared at each other across that hospital room, and I could see that Virginia finally understood that I wasn't going to step aside and let her take over my daughter's mothering experience. That night, after Virginia left, finally, Rebecca and I had a long talk about what was happening. Mama, I'm so confused, Rebecca said. Virginia keeps telling me I'm doing things wrong, but you say I'm doing fine. I don't know who to believe. Baby, I said, taking her hand, listen to your heart and trust your instincts. You carried this child for 9 months. Your body knows how to feed her. Your arms know how to hold her. Your voice is the one she heard in the womb. Nobody knows better than you what your baby needs. But what if I make mistakes? Then you'll learn from them, just like every mother before you. Making mistakes doesn't make you a bad mother, it makes you human. Rebecca squeezed my hand. Will you help me stand up to her? I want to do things my way, but she makes me feel like I don't know anything. Of course I'll help you, I promised. That's what mothers are for. The next day when we brought Emma home, Virginia was waiting at Rebecca and Marcus's house with enough supplies to stock a baby store. She had cribs, high chairs, bottles, clothes, toys, and equipment that Emma wouldn't need for months. I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed, Virginia announced, directing delivery men around the house like she was moving in herself. Mom, this is too much, Marcus said, looking overwhelmed. Nonsense, Virginia replied. Nothing is too much for my granddaughter. I've also arranged for a night nurse to help Rebecca with the nighttime feedings. A night nurse? For a healthy baby and a healthy mother who wanted to breastfeed? That's very generous, I said carefully. But I think Rebecca wants to take care of Emma herself. Of course she does, Virginia said. But new mothers need rest. Professional help is always wise. Professional help that would report back to Virginia about everything Rebecca was doing, no doubt. That's when Marcus surprised everyone by speaking up. Mom, Rebecca and I appreciate everything you want to do, but I think we need to figure things out ourselves first. Virginia looked shocked that her son was pushing back against her plans. Marcus, dear, I'm just trying to help. I have so much experience. I know, Mom, but this is our baby and our family. We need to do things our way. I was proud of my son-in-law in that moment, my dears. It takes courage for a man to stand up to a controlling mother, especially when she's wielding guilt and money as weapons. But Virginia wasn't giving up that easily. Over the next few weeks, she showed up at Rebecca and Marcus's house almost every day with new supplies, advice, and criticism disguised as concern. "Rebecca, Emma seems a little fussy. Are you sure she's getting enough milk? The baby's sleeping schedule seems irregular. Maybe she needs more structure. Emma's skin looks a little dry. Have you tried the cream I recommended?" Every comment was designed to make Rebecca doubt herself and feel like she needed Virginia's help and expertise. Meanwhile, I was coming over every few days to actually help, doing laundry, cooking meals, and giving Rebecca breaks to shower and rest while I held the baby. "Thanks for actually helping instead of just criticizing," Rebecca said to me one afternoon when Virginia had just left after a particularly difficult visit. "That's the difference between loving support and controlling manipulation," I told her. But the real showdown came 3 weeks after Emma was born, when Virginia announced that she was throwing a welcome home party for the baby. "I've invited all our friends and family," Virginia told Rebecca over the phone. "It'll be so nice for everyone to meet Emma properly." "A party?" Rebecca said weakly. "I'm not sure I'm ready for a big gathering yet." "Oh, nonsense, dear. It's time to show off this beautiful baby. I've already sent the invitations." Rebecca called me in tears after that conversation. "Mama, I don't want a big party yet. Emma's still so little, and I'm still figuring everything out. But Virginia's already planned everything and invited people. What do I do?" "You tell her no," I said simply. "But she's already sent invitations. Then she can send cancellation notices. This is your baby and your choice." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "Will you help me tell her?" "Absolutely." So the next day, Rebecca, Marcus, and I sat down with Virginia to discuss the party situation. "Virginia, we appreciate that you want to celebrate Emma," Rebecca began, "but we're not ready for a big party yet." Virginia's face went through several emotions: surprise, disappointment, and then anger. "Rebecca, dear, I think you're being a little selfish. People want to meet the baby, and it's important for Emma to be introduced to her extended family." "She's 3 weeks old," I interjected. "She doesn't need to be introduced to anyone except her parents." Virginia turned to me with fire in her eyes. "Zelda, this really isn't your decision to make." "You're right," I said calmly. "It's Rebecca and Marcus's decision, and they've decided no party." "Marcus," Virginia said, appealing to her son. "Surely you want to show off your daughter?" Marcus looked uncomfortable, but held firm. "Mom, Rebecca's right. It's too soon for a big gathering. Maybe in a few months." That's when Virginia played her trump card. "Well, I suppose if you don't want to use the party I've planned, I'll just have to cancel the nursery renovation I was going to surprise you with." Using money to manipulate her son and daughter-in-law? I'd seen enough. "Virginia," I said, standing up, "let me tell you something. You can't buy your way into being the most important grandmother in this baby's life. Love doesn't come with price tags, and respect can't be purchased with renovations and parties." "How dare you?" Virginia sputtered. "I'm only trying to provide for my granddaughter." "No, you're trying to control her parents and take over their family," I shot back. "And I won't stand by and watch you manipulate my daughter with guilt and money." What happened next was not my proudest moment, my dears, but sometimes a mama has to do what a mama has to do. Virginia stood up and pointed her finger at me. "You have no right to interfere in my son's family, and you have no right to steamroll over my daughter's wishes for her own child." We stood there glaring at each other while Rebecca started crying, and Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear. Finally, Rebecca spoke up through her tears. "Stop it. Both of you. This is supposed to be about Emma, but you're making it about yourselves." She was right, and I felt ashamed that our fighting was adding stress to my daughter's life when she should have been enjoying her new baby. "Rebecca, I'm sorry," I said softly. "You're absolutely right." Virginia remained silent, her lips pressed together in a thin line. "I think we all need some space," Marcus said diplomatically. "Maybe we can table this discussion for now." But Virginia wasn't ready to table anything. "Marcus, I think it's time for you to choose. Either I'm welcome in this family as your mother, or Zelda can take over completely. But I won't be treated as a second-class grandmother. The room went dead quiet. Virginia had just given her son an ultimatum. Choose between his mother and his wife's mother. Marcus looked at his mother with sadness and disappointment. Mom, that's not a choice I should ever have to make. Grandparents should be working together, not competing. Well, apparently that's not possible with some people, Virginia said, looking pointedly at me. That's when I realized that this conflict was hurting everyone, especially Emma, who deserved to have grandmothers who loved her instead of fought over her. You know what, Virginia? I said quietly. You're right about one thing. This competition isn't good for anyone, especially the baby. Everyone looked at me in surprise. So I'm going to make you an offer, I continued. We can keep fighting and make everyone miserable, including Emma. Or we can figure out how to be grandmothers together, even if we don't like each other very much. Virginia stared at me suspiciously. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we put Emma first and our egos second. You can keep your money and your parties and your fancy equipment. I'll keep doing what I do best, supporting my daughter and loving my granddaughter. We don't have to be friends, but we can be civil for the sake of this family. Marcus and Rebecca both looked hopeful, but Virginia still seemed skeptical. And what makes you think you can just divide up grandmother duties like pieces of a pie? Because, I said, Emma is big enough for two grandmothers' love, as long as those grandmothers remember that they're not the stars of this show. Rebecca and Marcus are the parents, and what they say goes. It wasn't a perfect solution, my dears, but it was a start. Virginia and I agreed to a very uncomfortable truce where we would coordinate our visits, respect Rebecca and Marcus's decisions, and try to avoid being in the same room unless absolutely necessary. Did it work perfectly? No. Did Virginia still try to override Rebecca's parenting choices? Yes. Did I still get annoyed when Virginia showed up with expensive gifts designed to make my practical help look inadequate? Absolutely. But we learned to coexist for the sake of Emma and her parents. Virginia got to be the fancy grandmother who provided material things, and I got to be the hands-on grandmother who provided practical help and emotional support. Most importantly, Rebecca learned to trust her own instincts as a mother, and to set boundaries with both of us when we overstepped. I appreciate both of you wanting to help, she told us one day when Virginia and I were getting competitive again. But Marcus and I are Emma's parents, and what we say goes. If you can't respect that, you can't be here. My daughter had found her voice as a mother, and I was proud of her. Today, Emma is 6 months old and the light of all our lives. Virginia and I maintain our polite truce, united in our love for that precious baby even if we can't stand each other. Rebecca has grown into a confident mother who makes her own decisions and stands up for her family when necessary. And Marcus learned that sometimes a man has to choose between keeping peace and doing what's right for his wife and child. The lesson I learned, my dears, is that being a grandmother isn't about being the most important or the most generous or the most knowledgeable. It's about supporting the parents and loving the child without trying to take over or compete with other people who love them too. Virginia and I will probably never be friends, but we've learned to be allies in loving Emma. And sometimes that's enough. Remember this when you find yourself in competition with other family members. The children don't need us to fight over them. They need us to love them, support their parents, and show them what healthy family relationships look like. Pride and jealousy can turn the most joyful occasions into battlefields, but love and wisdom can turn even the worst conflicts into opportunities for growth and understanding. Now go hug your grandbabies, and remember that there's always enough love to go around when we put the children first and our egos last.